For more than 2 decades, the attacks of September 11th have been shadowed by some incredibly persistent and controversial theories. So today, we're going to investigate the core claims of the so-called inside job theory and actually stack them up against the evidence from official reports and scientific findings. And this, right here, is the central question, isn't it? For so many people, the official story just felt incomplete, or for some, maybe even deceptive. So what we're going to do is lay out the most prominent claims and then see exactly where the evidence leads. Okay, first things first, let's just ground ourselves in the timeline of that day, the facts that no one disputes. In just under 2 hours, this series of attacks unfolded, leading to the collapse of the Twin Towers and the loss of 4 hijacked planes. These are the foundational events of that morning. So after this massive investigation, the official 9/11 Commission came to a conclusion. The attacks were carried out by al-Qaeda. Now, the report did point out multiple intelligence failures for sure, but it ultimately placed the responsibility squarely on the 19 hijackers and their network. And that official conclusion, that's the baseline for our whole investigation here. But, almost immediately, different ideas started popping up. And they eventually grew into this movement that argues the attacks were actually an inside job. So let's dive in and break down the main arguments that really challenge that official story. Now, the inside job theory isn't really one single idea. It's more like a collection of claims. But the big ones you hear most often are these: that the World Trade Center towers were brought down with explosives, that a missile hit the Pentagon, not a plane, that the government knew it was coming, and that the U.S. air defense system NORAD was told to stand down. Okay, so now we get to the investigation part. We're going to take these major claims one by one and put them side by side with the findings from the official reports and what scientists and engineers have to say. This is probably the single biggest point of debate. I mean, think about it. The sight of 2 massive 110-story steel skyscrapers just pancaking from fire was, for a lot of us, just unbelievable. It felt like it defied the laws of physics. And that feeling, that doubt, is really the foundation of the whole controlled demolition theory. And this quote right here, this really captures the technical argument at the heart of it all. People who believe in the demolition theory say that since jet fuel, which is pretty much kerosene, can't get hot enough to actually melt steel, the fires simply could not have caused the total collapse we saw that day. Okay, this is where the details are absolutely crucial. The claim that jet fuel can't melt steel, that's technically true. But here's the thing. According to fire safety experts and the official NIST report, the steel didn't have to melt. It just needed to get weak. Steel loses about half of its strength at around 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. The fires got the steel supports hot enough to warp and sag, and that's what kicked off the collapse. So the steel didn't melt. It just lost its ability to hold up the building. And this brings us to the building that many people point to as the smoking gun of the whole inside job theory, World Trade Center 7. We're talking about a 47-story skyscraper that collapsed, almost perfectly, into its own footprint late that afternoon, without ever being hit by a plane. For many, this is just undeniable proof of a controlled demolition. Now, to understand the official explanation for this, we have to talk about a key engineering idea: progressive collapse. It's basically a chain reaction. The best way to think about it is like a house of cards. You pull out one critical card near the bottom, and the whole thing becomes unstable and just cascades down. So according to NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the collapse of WT7 was a sequence of events. First, when the North Tower came down, huge pieces of debris slammed into WT7, causing major damage. Second, that damage started fires that just burned out of control for almost 7 hours. Third, all that heat eventually caused a single critical support column to fail. And once that one column went, it kicked off that chain reaction, that progressive collapse that brought the whole building down. All right, let's switch gears to another huge area of focus, the response of NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command. The question is simple: how, with the most powerful air force on the planet, were no hijacked planes intercepted? This question led directly to the stand-down theory, the idea that the military was actually told to hold back. This is where a lot of the public's mistrust really started to grow. The 9/11 Commission found that what military and aviation officials said at first just didn't match the facts. For example, NORAD said they were tracking United 93, but the Commission discovered they didn't even know about the hijacking until after the plane had already crashed. It got so bad the Commission had to subpoena their own government agencies for records, which made their own staff think they were being misled. Now, that doesn't prove a conspiracy, but it definitely points to a massive breakdown in communication and transparency. So, even with all these explanations from scientists and official investigations, these theories have stuck around for over 2 decades. And to really understand why, we have to look past the physical evidence and dive into the psychology of why we believe what we believe. Psychological research points to a few really powerful drivers. Things like a deep-seated mistrust in the government or a feeling of being powerless. There's also this very human need for big events to have big causes. The idea that just 19 men with box cutters could bring the country to its knees can feel, well, just too simple. And of course, the internet has been a total game changer, letting these ideas spread like wildfire. This quote right here really gets to the heart of it. Research suggests that this way of thinking is often built more on rejecting the official story than it is on proving a single solid alternative. The focus becomes finding holes and weird anomalies in the official narrative, just saying, this can't be true, rather than building a case for a different, specific plot. So, after all this, where does that leave us? How are we supposed to process all of this information, from official reports to stuff we see online? Let's wrap up by focusing on what it means to think critically about this. And here's the crucial point. There is a huge difference between asking legitimate questions about government failures or transparency, like with NORAD's testimony, and making claims about a massive, secret plot without any real, verifiable proof. Healthy skepticism is absolutely vital, but it has to be guided by evidence. So when you look at the main bodies of evidence, a really clear consensus starts to emerge. The investigations by NIST and the 9/11 Commission, backed up by the vast majority of engineers, all conclude that the World Trade Center collapsed because of the plane impacts and the fires that followed. While these reports absolutely call out huge government failures, they found no evidence of an inside plot. On the flip side, the alternative theories tend to focus on pointing out what they see as flaws in that official story. And that leaves us with this final, really important question. The story of the 9/11 inside job theory. It's not just about one day. It's a case study in how we process information, trauma, and trust in an age where information and misinformation is everywhere. Figuring out how to separate genuine questions from belief without evidence, well, that might be one of the biggest challenges we all face.